Craig Lagans, and with me as always is my podcast wrestling tag team partner, Daniel Leslie Calachico, and we are here.
It's not my middle name, you bastard.
I'm sorry, Dana Rebecca Calachico. Sorry.
Alright, I'll take it.
For another edition of HIAC Talk Radio. You can find us here each and every week talking about our favorite spectator sport now, pro wrestling, if that is indeed what we're still calling it at this rate. You can find me anywhere on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter at Craig Lagans, CraigLiggeons. And Daniel, where can people follow you if they so choose?
Follow me on DanLaw at DanLaw83 on all social media platforms and YouTube. So if you miss something here, it'll be there.
If you miss hearing it, you can see.
And who wouldn't want to see these gorgeous faces?
Exactly. I'm talking in Amber. Right
and
there.
Amber. I'd get Roscoe, but he'd just look at me like, asshole, you woke me up.
And Roscoe has a performance appearance fee that's very high.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
I can't afford
the reason why I am doing the honors this week is because, last week we had 3 weeks worth of wrestling story, and because of everything that came up, came down, nerd herders. So now we're start with the wrestling story. And it's a big week in professional wrestling history, but the stuff that did happen has historic significance even to this day. Okay? So let's start. Gentlemen and ladies, again, not necessarily in this order, we're going to go back to a time where territories ruled professional wrestling, where there was wrestling in all 50 states, where you can get a plethora of different matches from different territories, from different promoters, from different wrestlers. There wasn't the monolith mega church police state of wrestling that there is now. This is back when titles were called belts. This is back when medical facilities were called hospitals. And this is back when sports entertainment was professional wrestling. We're going to start October 9th. A date that was celebrated quite a bit on social media platforms. It would have been the 53rd birthday of my favorite wrestler at the time of his passing, and in my top 10 of greatest WWE superstars of all time. I'm not saying greatest wrestlers, because I've gotten heat over this about playing the game about greatest WWE superstars. This man has always been in my top 10, and the reason I got heat because this man is in my top 10 and The Undertaker is not, and The Undertaker will never be out in my top 10. But happy belated 53rd birthday to Latino Heat, Eddie Guerrero.
I know, before you finish your dissertation on the great Eddie Guerrero, I know every year we get to this day, we talk about him, and it's earned.
Yeah.
There's not many wrestlers, and I don't mean, I'm tired of prefacing anything. If you take it the wrong way, it's not my problem. I'm not saying there's no wrestler that's good today. I'm saying there hasn't been a wrestler that has been that good in a very long time. There are very few.
Yes. And very few that are a plus face and an A plus heel.
It's just an incredible. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Anything he did, any way he went, any angle he came from, or a mixture of both. We talk about that last match he ever had, and the spot with Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
With the chair. And pointing to Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
Total face, total heel move.
Yes.
It's just there are a few, but there are few wrestlers where you go back, and maybe this is in the shadow of his passing. Maybe. I would argue it isn't, but maybe. where you go back and look at everything is almost damn flawless.
Yeah.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
And every year, you either discover a match you saw live and forgotten, or people discover a new match of his that they hadn't seen ever and are just as amazed by him as they were when he was alive years ago.
Yeah.
It's incredible. We could not talk about that man enough.
No.
Never.
No.
Never, ever, ever.
And when I said I prefaced this at the beginning of the show about the stuff that happened this week in wrestling history that still resonates to this day. I know you don't watch the current product, Dan, but this past Monday on Monday Night Raw, in a match between Ricochet and God, the newest Cedric
Oh,
Alexander.
Cedric Alexander.
Yeah,
Cedric Alexander is an amazing talent. So I
and,
hope this
and did
echoes what you just
Ricochet.
said.
Well, the match started. The match it had conditions. If Ricochet won, the Hurt Business can no longer lay a hand on him. If
Oh,
Ricochet lost, he would join the Hurt Business.
gotcha.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
so referee goes down. Cedric, under orders from MVP, goes to gets a chair. Okay, he slides and he slides in it, or MVP slides the chair to Cedric, but Ricochet intercepts it. So he picks up the chair and he looks, for all intents and purposes, that he's going to whack the crap out of Cedric Alexander. He sees the referee getting up. He slams this chair on this canvas, throws it to Cedric Alexander, and instead of falling flat like Eddie did, he did a Will Smith from Fresh Prince. Oh, and he fell back. Referee came to, saw Cedric with the chair. He immediately and rang the bell. Ricochet wins by disqualification, and even selling the whole thing with Eddie as he was going up the ramp, going by and and selling ahead again. Complete tribute to Eddie Guerrero by Ricochet this past Monday. He mentioned it on Twitter. The announcers, Michael Cole, even said it on Raw. Somewhere Eddie is smiling.
That's
So,
funny.
yes, going on 15 years ago, and the exact same spot that Eddie made famous was his last match with Mr. Anderson.
That's so funny. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
take. It's just to clarify, Craig.
Mm.
I'm not watching it. Frankie Picard, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, Captain
What's
Picard.
That's it. Yes, yes, Captain Picard. How you doing? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Um, not that I'm not watching the current product. It's
Hmm.
just I took a break. I posted the other day, and this is Wrestling Historian, so I'm not going to go over it too much. I tried to watch the Collective this weekend. Even bought the month from Independent Wrestling TV. And not going into any details.
Hmm.
Not to personalize speaking out because thankfully it had nothing to do with me, anybody I knew on that end of it.
Hmm.
But there was something that happened with our company, Primetime Pro. Feelings were hurt. Feelings were more than hurt. My feelings were hurt because it was something that has affected me, and it's a bad thing. Of course, you're still smoking, Frankie. Absolutely. Every day you wake up, nothing changes. You only get better. I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. But I couldn't bring myself to watch it. I'm just taking a mental break from current wrestling and the OCD. I explained a little bit last week how my brain works. If I
Hmm.
don't set a date, I can't do something. So I
Yeah.
decided Halloween Havoc's going to be, not that I matter. I don't mean it like that. Like I'm some big, like it matters to anybody that I'm not watching. I'm saying personally for myself, because they're calling it Halloween Havoc, I'm marking that date when I start watching live again or trying to watch on rerun through DVR. I've been keeping track with the YouTube clips.
Good.
But now that you
Uh-huh.
mentioned this, I've missed that. I'm going
Yeah.
to go backwards and watch that episode. Um, that's awesome. What a
Yes.
tribute. Again, let's off the top of our head. What year was it? 97. Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Halloween Havoc,
Uh-huh.
97, right?
Yeah. And when you say Halloween Havoc, that's immediately what I think of.
Yeah.
And because both men will say that was their best match, and Eddie will say that's the one match that he'll look at and say, I wouldn't change a thing. And that's
Can't argue with that.
from a 25-year career. The backflip DDT that Rey Mysterio did on Eddie, he's never done that move. He had never done that move before, and he's never done it since. He did it in that one match with Eddie, and it was perfection. And he's never even tried it again, um, because of he and Ray, Eddie and Ray had that insane chemistry. Just like Eddie and Dean Malenko did, just like Eddie and Chris Benoit did, just like uh, Eddie and with the tag team matches that Eddie and Chavo had against Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas, you know, absolute. That's like watching. That was for me. That was like watching Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood against the Briscoes back in 1983. You had four of the best workers in there at the time, and the two best tag teams in all of pro wrestling. But again, but the common denominator is Eddie
Eddie
Guerrero.
Guerrero, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
uh,
any match against Dean Malenko.
yeah. Everybody looks at there's three matches in ECW that kind of defined ECW.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
yeah, because if we think of ECW, everyone automatically thinks tables, ladders, chairs, barbed wire, blood. But if it wasn't the Eddie Dean, it's what gave ECW credibility, and along with Rey Mysterio and Juventud and Psychosis, and bringing Lucha Libre to a national audience in the United States, hadn't been done before.
I mean, look at it years later when ECW
Mm.
was still running live on WGTW late at night.
Yeah,
Those tapes were still promoting the Malenko Guerrero stuff.
yeah, it's timeless, and like I said, no one has come close to matching that. Um,
It will
that
hold up or blow away a lot of
yeah,
matches these days. A lot.
most definitely.
Yeah.
So happy belated 53rd birthday, and Viva la Raza
53. Jesus. I mean,
to Eddie
when
Guerrero.
you say that, it's just like,
Yeah.
oh my God. It has been so long, quite frankly, since he's passed.
Mm-hmm.
And he would have been 53.
Yep. He passed away right for his 38th birthday.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Be lucky to
Well,
live that long. I only got a
yeah.
year.
Yeah. And we're just like we're lucky that we had him. We're lucky we've had you for so long, Darren.
Oh,
Thank you.
stop.
I will stop right now. Yes, that's all. Um,
That's all you get,
also,
bitch.
on this same date, one of Eddie's great opponents, and I don't know if you saw the latest Stone Cold podcast. His guest was Kurt Angle, and he had some choice words about the late Eddie Guerrero. They had some great matches as well, and they also had some pull apart fights
Yeah.
in the locker room afterwards. But Kurt still said he had nothing but love for Eddie because he was like a brother, where you fight with your brother, but they can still have a great match.
Didn't Eddie kind of get one up on him on a Greco-Roman match, like
Yeah,
in the locker room or something? Kind of like
yeah,
the Jericho getting one up on Big Goldberg at one point.
yeah. Just on one. But it was one of their many. And not that there was a lot, but there was more than one time they got into a dust up in the locker room um, after a match. Eddie said one time he thought Kurt was being too stiff, and Kurt said he wasn't, and they had a pull apart brawl, and then they all talked and calmed down. They went back to the same locker room, and Eddie got right back in Kurt's face because you still thought we were done, and Eddie's like, no, I'm still mad. So. But he loved Eddie. And anyway, I bring up Kurt Angle on this date, October 9th, 2006, because that was a date that Kurt Angle debuted in TNA.
Oh, I remember being so shocked about that because they just put him on the magazine cover for the WWE magazine.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it was like, nah, I ain't going to ECW. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Just effed off and went
And
to.
I included this in the Wrestling Historian just because of the significance of it, because TNA, now it wasn't the first time they had former WWE stars there. The Dudley Boys had already gone, but Kurt Angle was the biggest, get, as it were, for TNA. And, you know, he was, 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 It didn't swing the pendulum as people would think, but still seeing Kurt Angle on a competing wrestling program was very big.
Yeah.
Not the same as Chris Jericho showing up in the AEW or Dean Ambrose or a Rusev showing up on AEW now, but I don't think anything would have that type of significance for AEW if someone from WWE. But Kurt Angle going to TNA October 9, 2006 was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the internet was abuzz of that for days
Yeah.
after days.
October 10th, 1980. Remember I said, Dan, about stuff that happened this week and still having repercussions to this day? Well, October 10th, 1980, in the Omni in Atlanta, there was a round-robin tournament to crown new Georgia Tag Team Champions. And the three teams involved in this round-robin tournament were the Assassins, Mr. Wrestling 1 and Mr. Wrestling 2, and the three-man team of the Fabulous Freebirds. Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy defeated Wrestling 1 and 2. And in the finals, Terry Gordy and Buddy Roberts defeated the Assassins. And the Freebirds, the three of them, would be the Georgia Tag Team Champions. And it was then that they invoked the Freebird rule that any two members of the three-man team can defend the Tag Team Championship. 40 years ago, that rule was invoked, and it's still being used today.
Used it with the New Day.
Yeah.
They used it with the Jersey Triad. And shame on you if you don't know who that is. Look that up.
Yes.
Shame the F on you.
Yes.
They used it with the NWO. They used it with everybody that had another member. They were like, yeah, it's the Freebird rule. I remember hearing that the first time actually with the Jersey Triad that I remember.
Yeah.
That I remember.
Dan, they even used it with Layla and Michelle McCool
That's
when
right.
they both were the world with the WWE Women's Champions.
That's true. I forgot about that. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was the first time they used that for a singles championship.
That is the first time.
That's amazing. Yeah, the Freebird rule. I was just thinking about the Freebirds the other day, not to go off, just a quick aside, where they tell that story about getting shot at the Hall of Fame, and they're scared to death, and they're behind the vehicle breathing. They look over at Terry, and he's laughing. And what's so goddamn funny? They missed. He's getting shot at and laughing his ass off.
That was Terry Gordy, man.
There's a Freebird rule for you.
Yeah. You shoot the Freebird, you better miss, damn it.
The Freebird rule. Yeah, that was the main. The Freebird rule was they use it every now and then for the New Day. We don't want to talk about that. I just get mad. But they used it as a main plot for the Jersey Triad because now that I've told you to do research, it's DDP, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Chris Canyon.
Yeah.
And again, shame on you if you don't know that. Not to me gaslighting or gatekeeping. The hell the shame on you. That every week because they come out, you wouldn't know, and they'd be like, "Well, Freebird rule today," or just telling me the Freebird rule. Who the hell knows?
Mm-hmm.
And then if DDP felt like wrestling or not, he would do the Freebird rule. That's amazing. 40 years, jeez.
40 years ago.
I realized it was that old into their thing.
Yeah, and this was the first. It wasn't the first tag team title for the Freebird, but it was the first time that they had a title with Buddy Roberts. Right. And because this was the Georgia Tag Team Champions, and this was the infancy of TBS, the Superstation. Cable TV was about to break worldwide, but still TBS was seen in more outlets among the South and the Northeast than any other any other syndicated show. So the Freebirds, this was their first national exposure, and with the Georgia Tag Team Championship and the three-man Freebirds, this was their first title, and this was the beginning of their domination, their influence in the tag team scene. Because when TBS did take off and your Freebirds were your tag team champions, they were seen everywhere. And it was after, they broke up. Michael Hayes became heel. Terry Gordy stayed. Michael Hayes became a face. Terry Gordy heel. Buddy Roberts left the territory. They both won the tag team title with other people. Michael Hayes did, and Terry Gordy actually won the Georgia tag team title with Jimmy Snuka. Um, they reunited in the Southeastern Conference, Southeastern Championship Wrestling. They came back to Georgia as faces, and they joined Buddy Roberts. And by then, 1982, cable TV was going crazy, and the Freebirds were, one of the most popular teams, influential tag teams in all of wrestling. And it was because of their exposure on national TV, being Georgia Tag Team Champions. They ruled there for 2 years, and they're because their show TBS was being shown in other parts of the country now. That's when Fritz von Erich said, "Hey, these guys are pretty hot. They're a young three-man team. I've got a young three-man team. Why don't we get these guys together?" One phone call to Gary Hart later, and the Freebirds were on their way.
And the goddamn rest is history with that, isn't it?
Yep. Yep.
Man.
Yep.
Like I said, just to reach into that you
Mhm.
talk about numbers. Everyone wants to talk
Yeah.
about numbers. All I can still see is slamming the door.
Yep. Yeah, and it's still the most repeated,
Yeah.
imitated spot in wrestling history.
Yep.
But again, started with the Freebirds, Christmas Day, 1982.
I know Michael P.S. Hayes, rightfully so, in my opinion, gets a lot of slack for his mouth
Hmm.
backstage. A couple reasons why he's been, sent home a few times. Like, why don't you go home for a little while? Freebirds were wrestling geniuses.
Yeah,
There's no other way of putting it.
no. And I like when I said on last week's edition, I put them and the Road Warriors and the Fabulous Ones to a lesser extent as the most influential tag teams of all time. But what the Freebirds did, um, it still resonates again 40 years later. There's not going to be another Road Warriors, but there's going to be plenty of teams, three-man groups, because of the Freebirds. You mentioned the New Day. You also the Shield, the Wyatt family, the Hurt Business now. Three-man teams are what make if it's almost like you can't have a wrestling organization if you don't have a three-man stable. It all started with the Freebirds, and it started with their first title win 40 years ago. 40 years ago this week in the
I'm
Angle
not even
Airline.
40. That makes me feel good about something for once.
That was that. Another big title changed hands October 12th, Dan, 1992, in that wrestling hotbed of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Hey,
The
somebody
W
lives in Saskatoon, goddammit.
Yes, somebody does, and it was packed that night because
Nobody lives there. Sorry,
oh well,
Saskatoon.
no, well that's okay, Saskatoon. Well, the Hearts were in the attendance that night because that was the night that Bret Hart defeated Ric Flair to win his first WWF Heavyweight Championship.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
Yep.
1992. I just finished up uh, WWE Network Chronology in 91, so I just need
Hmm.
to add 92 to the list. So we're going to we're going to start getting into stuff where 92 is where I start remembering more. There's a few things
Yeah.
in 91 I'm like, oh yeah, but now except for conveniently, just a quick aside again, my brain forgot Battle Bowl on purpose, I think,
Good.
because holy Jesus Christ. Whew.
Yeah, bad. But October 12th, 1992, Bret Hart, long considered by many critics and especially fans alike to be the best wrestler in the company, even during the dying days of Hulkamania, even when he was ensconced in the tag team with Jim Neidhart, the Hart Foundation. Ask any wrestling fan who was the best wrestler in the company, they would say Bret Hart.
Yeah.
You couldn't take away anything. You couldn't miss how good he was. Um, in the late '80s, going into the early '90s, and him breaking away, turning face at WrestleMania 4, and staying face, and winning the Intercontinental Championship from Mr. Perfect in a great SummerSlam match that kind of cemented him as being the best wrestler in the company, because back then the Intercontinental title was considered the working man's title. Who was the best wrestler, they got to be Intercontinental champion. So that was an indicator that Bret Hart could be on his way.
Harry just wanted to point out that the best thing that happened in '91, which is debatable, is his birth.
Okay.
Just,
Thank you, great one, for
just relaying the unfortunate message.
Okay. In '91, I'll have to research the year of 1991 to see where that greatness occurred. But the greatness that did occur in 1992, October 12th, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, with Owen and I'm sorry, not Owen, Stu and Martha Hart in attendance. Bret Hart won his first WWE Championship, his first world title, and which cements his legacy. And again, the rest is history.
Taken out by a kick to the face. Just what a. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, and had he not, I don't know how much longer. Obviously, Brett would have gone a lot longer than he had, but I don't know how much longer he would have. Um, that kick to the face, that errant kick to the face by Mr. Goldberg ended his career. Um, I The only trepidation I have is that he might have had a chance to go back to the WWE and still wrestle um, before he called it quits, because I'm sure that's what he wanted to do.
I do think he would have known when to bow out in time.
Yeah.
Because that whole thing about, integrity of the business and the history and the tradition, he would have been like, all right. Although looking at it, I'm like, well, maybe not, because tradition and history is to stay too long.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought his return, under the circumstances when it did happen,
Mm-hmm.
was fine.
Yeah.
I don't know why people view the ass kicking Vince got as a bad. Like, it's one of the worst things that we've ever seen. It was a make good. He took his receipt.
Yeah.
Vince years later got his receipt cashed. What's the
Yeah.
problem?
And Vince has gotten his receipt from a couple people,
Yes, he
from
did.
Brett, from CM Punk. So he's he's I know it's not enough for some folks, because they always
Well,
see.
you know.
Yeah,
Which Goldberg was Goldberg again? Did he fail as a mother?
Beverly.
Probably. I
Yeah.
don't know. Harry, nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yes.
Go ahead, boss. Take your show back over.
October 13th. Uh, October 13th, Dan, is a date we'll call Tag Team Turmoil,
Oh boy.
because this is what happened on this date. I had to put on my old man glasses for this one. Uh, October 13th, 1981. Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito defeated Bubba Ray Dudley's favorite tag team of Tony Gurria and Rick Martel for the WWF Tag Team Championship. They did it when Rick Martel came off the top rope for a flying body press, and he was greeted with a face full of salt by Mr. Fuji.
God
And
damn it, Mr. Fuji.
the slow motion capture on this, Dan, on Saturday afternoon TV was flawless, because he saw Rick Martel in flight, and then you saw his face just completely covered in salt thrown by Mr. Fuji. So,
Hold that thought for a second.
mhm.
Harry, I don't watch the Goldbergs. I knew what you meant. I haven't watched one episode. You know how picky I am about TV. Shut up, or I'll have a Twitter account unblock you. Go ahead.
That was 1981. 1985, Ivan and Nikita Koloff regained the NWA Tag Team Championship from the Rock and Roll Express, starting their second reign as NWA Tag Team Champions. October 13th, 1992,
Ooh.
Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase and Mike Rotundo, defeated the Natural Disasters, Earthquake and Typhoon, to start their second reign as WWF Tag Team Champions. And if that wasn't enough, and by God, don't you think it ought to
It
be,
ought to be.
on that same date, October 13th, 1997, the Steiners defeated Scott Hall and Six, substituting for Kevin Nash, to win their fifth WCW Tag Team Championship on an episode of Monday Nitro. And if you're scoring at home, that Monday Nitro did a 3.8, and the Raw that night did a 2.3.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, so all those tag team titles all changed hands on the same date, October 13th. Which brings us to today. The only thing of significance that happened is came up in my memories. It's, I believe it was 11 years. We lost one of the greatest managers, one of the greatest characters, and one of the most colorful human beings to ever walk the planet Earth. 11 years ago today, we said goodbye to my captain, Lou Albano.
Mario.
Yes.
The first Mario. Before Bob Hoskins.
Before Bob Hoskins. And,
there was Lou Albano.
Yeah. You don't know the story about John Leguizamo? John Leguizamo, who played Luigi in the Mario Brothers movie, turned down the Antonio Banderas role in Philadelphia in order to do Super Mario Brothers. One of his many regrets, he says.
Yeah.
He said, "I have an opportunity to work with Bob Hoskins and Raul Julia. Sign me up." But yeah, he turned down the Antonio Banderas role in Philadelphia, the role that would eventually make Antonio Banderas a star, to do Super Mario Brothers.
And I don't know, he was also Armand.
Yeah.
And remember my name. Armand.
But Lou Albano, one of the greats, he was my first manager, my first heel manager that I remember booing and actively hating on my TV every week, because every week he had a new tag team. He led 15 tag teams to World Wrestling Federation Gold. First ones being King Curtis and Baron Mikhail Cicluna. Last ones being the Sheepherders.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry. No, the Head Shrinkers. I'm sorry. Some of these dumb names in the WWF. Head Shrinkers. Samu and Fatu with Alpha. But he also managed Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. He also managed Don Morocco to an Intercontinental title win, and Greg Valentine, and his only world championship. His only world championship, and what a world championship! If you're going to have one world champion in your entire career after 15 tag team titles, your one world champion was Ivan Koloff, who was the only man to ever defeat Bruno Sammartino in Madison Square Garden. But Lou Albano, great talk, and talked in him. He was one half of the tag team. I don't know if I told you, Lou Albano's wrestling career. He was one half of the tag team known as the Sicilians, with the late great Tony Altomore. And the Sicilians, as a gimmick, they had the white silk scarf. They come to the ring with black jackets, white silk scarf, pencil thin mustaches, and the hats. Obvious heels. And they were so over, Dan.
It's a goddamn racist, man.
But it had worked so well, Dan, that not only did the fans hate them because they thought they were gangsters, actual Sicilians came up to them and said, "Hey, you guys need to tone that down." Okay? That's how over they were. He said, "You're giving us actual mobsters a bad name, so you need to cut it out."
Listen to me, you son of a bitch. If you don't knock it off, I'm gonna kill you.
and Lou depending on who you ask, he talked to several legitimate businessmen, Italian mob types about the Sicilians, and according to Lou, some gave their blessing, some didn't, but either way, the Sicilians were done. And they held a couple of tag team titles. One of them, the WWF United States Tag Team Champions, the precursor to the actual WWF Tag Team titles. But
listen to me, you son of a bitch. I swear to God, I'm gonna come into your house and I'm gonna blow it up if you don't knock it off. Jesus Christ,
yeah, dude. And back then, Dan, they couldn't tell them that it was a work or that because they thought these because they
you
were
can't let
champions.
them know.
Yeah, that Renat. But when the Sicilian gimmicks went down,
Lou Albano's career, it wasn't over, but it wasn't, going anywhere quick. And one of his friends or one of his contemporaries suggested he go into managing because this guy said you've always been a good talker. Why don't you become a manager? And that man was Bruno Sammartino. Out of all the people, there was Bruno Sammartino that talked Lou Albano into being a manager. And Lou Albano went on to be one of the greatest managers in WWF history. No one is ever going to manage more World Tag Team Champions than Lou Albano. The Blackjacks, the Lumberjacks, the Valiant Brothers, like Mr. Fuji and Professor Tanaka, Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito, Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. Like I said, the Head Shrinkers. The man was just a complete, omnipresent part of the WWF from the 70s into the 80s. Even on the biggest stage of all, when rock and wrestling first happened, it was Lou Albano, his feud with Cyndi Lauper, that gave wrestling and the WWF in particular the national stage. And it was him in that Girls Just Want to Have Fun video that brought him a brand new audience. So between wrestling, MTV, and then the Mario Brothers franchise, Lou Albano touched more lives than he ever did. No one will ever have the success that Lou Albano had in tag team wrestling as a manager. No one is ever going to have 15 World Tag Team Champions in any organization. No one will be as colorful as Lou, will have the kind of heat that Lou had. I'd even mention the stabbings that he had, or the chairs that were broken over his head during his career because of the amount of heat that he had. The guy was amazing. The Jimmy Snuka, Ray Stevens, Buddy Rogers war was because of Lou. Turning Jimmy Snuka face was because of Lou Albano. Sad we had to say goodbye to him. I can't believe it's already been 11 years, but thank you, Captain, my Captain. Fare thee well, the great Louis Albano. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Wrestling Historian. And you can follow me if you like more of that stuff and my new haircut on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter at Craig Ligons, CraigLiggeons.
Follow me on Twitter and all social media platforms at DanLaw83. Block the great HB. You'll be better for it. VOCNation.com for all the podcasts, or YouTube.com/DanLaw83 to watch it. VOC Nation Radio Network. Type that into your podcast app on your phone. Harry's edits always sucked. That's why I took over, and he sucks at everything. And that's where we're going to end the show. For Craig Ligons, I am the above average comedian, ever so slightly. Dan Colachico. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.